Hi everyone, and happy Valentine's Day. I wanted to make sure episode 5 was released today, so here you go. After this episode, the only one left is the finale. I have that one slated to be released sometime in late spring or early to midsummer to cap off this series. The reason the release date is so far out is because I have another video planned in between this one, and that one has no correlation to this series, and because I know that video will be the hardest for me to talk about considering all the horrible stuff my ex-girlfriend did to me. Anyways, let's get into this one before I trail too far off track. So, recap of the story format in case this is the first you're seeing of this series. I'll be going over the events before and leading up to the relationship, the timeline of the relationship, how we broke up, if we stayed friends, and what I'd do if I ran into said ex in person today. This specific episode will actually be split into two parts, each having their own timelines because me and this person had two separate timelines of our relationship, so to speak. We had split up for what I thought was for good, but then around a year or so later, we got back together. This video will be part 1, and part 2 will be uploaded immediately after this one. Another tidbit is that I actually still speak to this person occasionally, but I honestly don't really consider them a friend anymore. While my other ex, Florigato, and I keep somewhat frequent contact and have hung out in person a few times in the past year, me and this person haven't seen one another in over 2 years in person, and I frankly don't really enjoy speaking with them like I do with Florigato. Anyways, the person in this story will be referred to as Yandere Dev for short, only because of the fact that the two share somewhat similar appearances and because some of their mannerisms are similar from what I've observed. No, I did not date the real Yandere Dev, so please don't put that image into your head. On to the story. I had met Dev when I was pushed into getting my first job by my parents at the beginning of junior year of high school. At the time, I was dating Pepe from the previous installment. On my second day of work, when I went to clock out, I saw Dev talking to one of the guys working the front desk that night, and something about him really intrigued me. So I confidently walked up to him and was like, "Whoa, that's crazy!" Not even knowing what they were talking about, but having a hunch that was the right thing to say. It was, and then he led me over to what he was talking about, and I was like, "Yeah, that is crazy." After that, we introduced ourselves and realized we both went to the same school. He was a grade above me, explaining how I hadn't met him before, nor was he in any of my electives. The next day, I go back to work and we meet up again. We talk some more, and I honestly found myself taken by his sense of humor and his personality. He was, at the time, just my type. My type has changed rather drastically since then, but anyways, back to the past. That same night, when we both clocked out, I confidently asked for his phone number and he gave it to me without a problem. That same night, we texted a little, but then he must have headed to bed. That night, while I was drawing, it sort of hit me that I had caught immediate feelings for Dev. From the moment I first met him, I knew something was there, but since I was in a relationship at the time, despite my feelings for Pepe having been fading, I tried desperately to push the ones for Dev to the back of my mind. Also, while polyamorous in current time, back then I was monogamous and my feelings for Pepe were actively fading. I didn't just start liking both of them. We didn't see each other for a while after that, and not seeing him at work or school sort of helped the feelings subside slowly. It didn't help me regain feelings for Pepe, but my feelings for Dev were eventually forgotten. A month goes by, and I'm at my register about ready to go on lunch break, and I turn my head to see none other than Dev standing by the time clock. I rushed to get the customer out of my lane so I could go talk to him, and it worked. Just like that, the feelings I had finally pushed aside came rushing back to me. From that point forward, we maintained regular contact, well, at least from my side. Sometimes I felt like Dev was purposefully ghosting me, which later on I'd find out was partially true, because some of my bullies saw us hanging out a couple times at school and came up to him like, "Seriously? You're friends with Moray? You!" And peer pressure got to Dev, so he would ghost me. Eventually, Dev became almost all I thought about. I was telling my friends about him, and eventually the feelings became way too much to contain, so I decided if they hadn't faded by around Valentine's Day that coming year, I was just going to break it off with Pepe. Both luckily and unluckily, Spielberg, my friend from the previous episode, found out about the secret harem, and I was able to break free from those chains. It was what I wanted, but it did still hurt. Once Pepe and I's relationship was over, I was off to pursue Dev. My first attempt to ask him out was a week or two after the breakup, asking him to go see the third How to Train Your Dragon with me. He had initially said no and said we didn't really share similar interests, which was a load of bullshit, but anyways, yeah, he rejected me at first. However, once I started to get to know him better, I realized he was afraid of getting into a relationship because of the only person he had dated before practically used him. He had said he didn't develop a crush since, but I would also find out later that was a lie. He had a crush, or maybe two, on other people before we dated, but that's besides the point. He wasn't a very honest person looking back. Another way to show my love was, for his birthday, I had gotten him a rather expensive gift. That gift was a copy of Pokemon Heart Gold and a Pokewalker included with a Pikachu already inside. Pikachu because his original Pokewalker had a Pikachu in it. He absolutely gushed over the gift, and I was so glad he loved it. Made me really happy to know I could make him happy. Nothing really eventful happens the next few months other than me trying to get to know him and most of the time being ghosted in real life or getting very short responses over text. Until my birthday. Dev had ran up to me in the hallway and said happy birthday, and I was like, oh hey, you remembered, thanks. Then he starts panicking because he didn't get me a gift like I got him, and I said it was okay, but he ended up giving me one of his pencils. I found it extremely cute, so I held on to that pencil and it became like my lucky charm for a while. A few weeks go by, it's May now, and I know at this point it's now or never. I have to confess my feelings or forever keep them bottled up. I decided, after some pushing and encouragement from a few friends, that I would rather confess than keep the feelings confined. So, at the end of May, I send him a text that confesses my feelings and leaves Dev with the question of, do you want to go out with me? I get no response initially, and I was torn because of that. I had tried to be stoic about what seemed like a rejection, but I couldn't keep it together, and all my friends knew it was eating me apart. Eventually, the person who would soon be my current partner and a couple of his friends told me to ask for my Heart Gold game back because he didn't deserve such a costly gift, and at the time I agreed. So I texted him saying I wanted my game back. He said he'd return it, and I left it at that. I let him keep the Pokewalker, though. I get a text on the way to school one morning that he had forgotten my game, and I just say, bring it to me before you graduate, and that he also owed me an apology. He said he would bring the game and that he was sorry, and I responded that if he wanted to reject me, he could have just told me instead of leaving me in limbo wondering what was going to happen, if anything. He then responded that if I wanted to do anything with him this summer to let him know, and I was taken completely aback at first. So I said for him to clarify, and he said he'd think about being in a relationship with me, but wasn't a definite yes or no yet. So I left it at that and tried to keep daily or every other day contact for a little bit. I proceeded to ask him if he'd made his mind up yet about 2 weeks later, as I was going to be out of state for a couple weeks, and said he still needed to think about it, so once again I left it at that. At this point, though, I was getting a teensy bit impatient, if I'm being honest, so 2 weeks later, when I'm on my way to be out of state, I text him to just forget it because I didn't want to waste my breath on someone who couldn't decide where to go with a potential partner. I was left on scene, and that kind of stung. A couple weeks go by, and I try to text him again, only to be left on scene again, which made me really upset, so I just stopped texting him for a while. Eventually, I decided to start speaking to him again, and I mustered the courage to try one final time to ask him out. This time, Dev finally accepts my proposal to try something out and see where it leads. 2 weeks later would be our first date. We have our first date, and it goes surprisingly well. We didn't share our first kiss or anything, but he did hug me sometime that night. I froze up, though, because I didn't quite register that he was hugging me. Right before the date is about to end, Dev tells me that he'd like to go out again sometime, so I'm really happy that the date apparently went well. We part ways, and I'm actually upset afterwards because I wish I had showed more affection, but having been through 3 bad relationships now, which includes Rubik and Pepe, I had now put up walls and was hesitant to let anyone else in. I had decided for our next date that I would take it up a notch. I bought him a personalized gift and was going to try to show some affection back. Flash forward to the second date. My anxiety was through the roof, and at some point Dev actually snapped at me for it, which in turn made me cry, but he almost immediately went back to normal. Before you get the idea, no, he's not bipolar, but he does have temper problems and is quick to anger or annoy. Once the date begins to conclude, I surprise him with his gift, and he absolutely adores it. I ask for a hug, so we hug, and while he is talking, I decide to surprise him with a kiss on the cheek. Dev suddenly stops talking and turns to me, and that's when we share our first kiss. I was honestly really happy. Once my mom and I dropped him off at his house, I didn't see him till November, like Thanksgiving, in person as he had went off to college. We did keep frequent contact though. Come November, we see each other again, and that's when both of us really begin to open up. Initially, I saw him as a very aloof person, but that turned out to not really be the case. I'm much happier now that we had both opened up to each other and felt more secure in the relationship. I had also gotten to meet his family, and while his dad seemed pretty chill, his mom seemed a teensy bit off, and so did his sister. Not saying I didn't like them, but more or less thought they didn't like me. I also ended up giving him that copy of Heart Gold back. We did see each other twice in December for Christmas and New Year's, and then not again until March, which is when COVID began to really take the world by storm. That time in March would be the very last time we see each other during the first quote-unquote part of our relationship. Once he's done with college for the year, we start to FaceTime almost every night. Eventually, during a video call, I somehow got Dev to confess that he had kept our relationship a secret from his group of friends and only told one friend. I asked if he was embarrassed of me or something, and he said no, and that he was just never sure when to bring it up, which I kinda thought was bullshit, because everyone I knew at the time knew I was in a relationship, so that call ended rather poorly. A whole day goes by without even a text from him, and we were texting daily at this point, so I knew at that point something was wrong. The next day, I'm hanging out with my soon-to-be partner, panicking about what could happen. He said not to worry about it, but inside I was frightened of a breakup potentially coming of this. We eventually part ways, and I asked to call him that night. He just gives me a very brief answer, which wasn't like him at this point, and so a call commences. A couple minutes in, Dev drops the bomb. The thing I had been dreading all day happened. He wants to break up because he thinks things aren't really working out. I asked what wasn't working because at this point I didn't see any issues, and he said because he had been feeling this way for months at this point, which made me really sad as I had been trying to, be a good partner, and I've been trying so hard in this relationship to make it last. I had been a good partner, I thought, showing affection, giving him gifts, maintaining communication, only to be told he had been thinking about ending the relationship for months. He never gave me a straight answer why he wanted to break up, so eventually I just got pissed and started yelling, which made him hang up the phone. That same night, I sent him a text, and I said that if this was it, then goodbye. Maybe one day we could try this again in the future, but for now, we can either remain friends or just go our separate ways completely. Spoiler alert, he chose to leave me on scene, and we didn't contact each other at all after that. I had thought about contacting Dev many times after the fallout, but never did out of fear of being rejected again. What I learned from this relationship is, actually, I don't know. I don't think I did anything wrong in this relationship. I was the best partner I could be, and I'm not sure where exactly I went wrong. I don't know. Maybe I went wrong trying so hard for Dev and not getting the same effort back. I guess that works. I learned not to put so much effort in when you're getting so little effort back. So, that's it for part 1. This part will not have a if I ran into them again segment, because that will all be explained away in part 2. I'm not sure if I'll do a double upload today and get the second part out as well, but if I do, you'll see it when it's up. I decided to split this one in two only because I technically consider both times Dev and I dated as separate relationships. And because if I put it all in one video, it would probably be too long. However, the finale will not be split up at all, so God knows how long that one is gonna be. And there's only so much Buckshot Roulette I can play, so this is part 1, and part 2 will probably feature another game. Anyways, I will see you guys in part 2, and happy Valentine's Day.